ready to bomba.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Ray Collazo. Subscribe to Bomba Live anywhere on YouTube and anywhere you can download a podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't you all love my introduction? And folks that are only hearing the audio version of it, the introduction not only got that bang and beat, but also features myself with some pictures when I was a little kid, which is always cool. But most importantly, the great collaborators I have on the show, the people you see in front of the camera. There's many others, producers and other collaborators that support us behind the scenes. But folks like the legendary freestyle singer Betty D, you're actually going to see a clip from her later on this episode, as well as Christina Vega, my Scorpio sister, Vanessa Maria Graber, Albert Garcia, Zulay Picarelli, Dionelli Reyes, Karina Martinez. The list goes on and on. Monty Perez is not featured in the clip, but my sports guy. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is actually being recorded. This is the episode 4 of the Fe season, which is Faith in Spanish season of Bomba Live. And I'm actually recording this literally the morning of my birthday. I turned 49 this morning or overnight. I think I was born early in the morning. So I'm 49 for real. And I wanted to record this episode. I thought it was very appropriate during the Fe season. Faith is something that is a very powerful emotion and sentiment and feeling in our community, from a spiritual dimension, from just kind of like a life force. And what do you have faith in, and what role does faith play in the quality of your life, believing that no matter your circumstances, there's another day, there's another round, there's another door that will open, and opportunities for you that you've been either praying on or just hoping for your whole life. And in my sense, in my case, when it comes to podcasting and content creation in this format, I've wanted to do this my whole life, literally. And to have the opportunity to do it is such a blessing. We are going to get into the political headlines in the second half of this episode. I know people are curious about my thoughts in our Found in Translation segment around what the results of the 2023 elections that took place a few days ago mean for our politics and the Latino community, as well as some thoughts on, kind of thinking about 2024. And I know many people are concerned. And certainly the New York Times Siena poll over the weekend around the potential Biden-Trump matchup raised some eyebrows. So I have some thoughts on that. But ultimately, I wanted to begin this episode, just reflecting on my birthday. And, getting to 49, where I come from, ain't a small thing. And, unfortunately, when I think about the first word that came to mind, thinking about this moment, gratefulness, I'm certainly grateful to still be here. And again, not a small thing. Several people that I know, as we all do, we've not only just lost, but we've lost way too young. And thinking about people like Vanessa Rivera out down in Tampa, who we honored at our live show in Philadelphia a few weeks back, who lost way too young. She was actually a little younger than me, and a young mother, nurse, activist. And so we continue to do Bomba Live and our activism and our we really dedicate our lives to people like Vanessa and so many others, and not on my homie out in the Southwest. I mean, it's too many names. That we do this work in their honor, people that were from our generation in particular, and people had birthdays around mine. In the case of a few of those folks, in particular, we continue to honor them. So I begin the reflection on this episode really in gratefulness, because God is keeps giving me a shot to do this and support my family and love my loved ones and be on my life journey. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. The other emotion and the other thought that I had is being humbled, and the lessons that's taught me over the last few years. And a lot of that stems from my health journey, from beginning when I contracted Guillain-Barré syndrome about a year and a half ago, and it still lingers. I'm doing okay, but it still lingers. And so the lessons of going through that experience, right after I'd recorded some episodes with Betty D and Christina at a full-fledged television studio for Bomba Live. Imagine. I was so excited. I got to do this thing. It's a crowd with people I admired watching on MTV when I was a kid. It was incredible episodes, incredible stuff. We just released the first of those 3 episodes early this week. And then to Tuesday after, my hands are all frozen and I don't know what the hell's going on. So, and those examples continue to happen to me where I get humbled. And sometimes in not so subtle ways. And so the humility that I feel like I need to combine with the gratefulness is a lesson. And in that, the third thing I wrote all kind of stuff down for politics. And then with the personal stuff, it's really hard to write it down. But the third word that God blessed me with this morning before I turned this mic was that I as I turned 49 today, I feel better about being a work in progress than I did even a few weeks ago. I really, for people that know me really well, know that, as I guess an overachiever when I was a kid, and I guess some people would perceive as fairly successful, behind, and then this perce- perception of confidence that I think I exude on doing the show and in my public life is that there's no one that beats me up more than me. And I really have struggled over the years, particularly as I've gotten older, to be honest with you, about how I feel like I've fallen short as a family man, and particularly in my career, and feeling like, this should be bigger. There should be more here. There, like I've just fallen short. I just feel like it's, why aren't I Jimmy Fallon by now? Like I should have had this taken care of and had all this money to take care of everybody and do the activism the way we should do it. And so, I would wonder with people in my network that didn't seem to be stressing about it like I did. And what I realized is they actually had this figured out and I didn't, which is you got your fame, you got your health, everything else is sort of secondary. And so I take that humbly, accept that lesson, and I feel better about being a work in progress than I did even fairly recently. So I combine those things, those feelings of feeling incredibly grateful to still be here and talk to y'all. And with the humility to say, you don't have it all figured out, dude. Get over yourself. And with being okay with not having it all figured out. And being, whether it's my health journey, my fitness journey, my political career, my content career and passion, my family journey, that it's so this is about all the great things you're going to learn and all the great additional blessings you're going to get. It's not about the things you're falling short on and you feel like you're falling short on. And I'm probably being a little too hard on myself anyway. So all those lessons I combine with the last thing, which is determination. I ain't gonna give up. And there's been times in my life where I did feel resigned to certain things. That I'd always be gordito my whole life, and I'm still gordito, but I don't feel resigned to it. And I think there's a path to. I believe, I have faith that there's a path to feeling better about myself physically and getting healthier, because that's really the most important thing. There's a path to being a better family person and being a better father and a better husband and a better son and a better brother and a better homie. And this path is leading and continues to lead to blessings. And ironically, I should look at my own content sometimes, because one of the quotes, one of the clips that we posted on the show that got probably the biggest reaction, one of the biggest reactions that I was the lead on, people love the quotes a lot, was this concept of, I stress about the numbers and the views of the show, and I still do. I ain't gonna lie about it. That's why y'all need to subscribe and give me feedback about the show. There's a lot of good stuff we're doing here. But when if one person benefits from this experience and this helps them on their journey or help them today or help them understand something, or wow, well, even that gordito guy can do it, why can't I try something? Then it's all been worth it, and it's going to keep being worth it. So I have to understand that this path is not about some social media metric. It's about so much more. So I just want to continue to thank you all for your support, and I appreciate you know, watching this and being a part of my birthday in some way. Because if you see this, you've been part of the celebration. Let's take a break. We're gonna hear actually from me talking about our latest sponsor, the Latin Podcast Awards. If you're not familiar with it, you got to check it out. LatinPodcastAward.com. You can already watch the 2023 award spectacular, which took place recently online and led by our fearless leader, the GOAT of the Spanish language podcast game, our great friend Felix Montalada, who we were blessed to have as one of the co-MCs at our recent live show in Philadelphia. Check out that episode featuring Felix and a cavalcade of stars that are part of the Bomba Live community on our YouTube page. And check out Latin Podcast Awards. If you want to check out what other Latino podcasts are popping, you're particularly interested in Spanish language podcasts or just podcasts from a Latino perspective in los dos idioma, literally the best of the best from around the world, Latin America, the United States, what have you. Definitely check out LatinPodcastAwards.com. So let's hear from, and I'm giving you all a little sneak peek of an episode that's not been released yet, but just an incredible moment. Two Puerto Rican 80s, 90s music icons and some of the collaboration they had back in those days. And then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the politics from this week here on Bomba Live, the episode 4 of the first season of Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Impressive piece of hardware I have there,
look
Charlie.
at that. Is it quite impressive?
Brother, no FOMO right here. You got to work real hard to get one of these. I want to shout out our great friend and our newest sponsor, Felix Montalada of the Latin Podcast Awards. Charlie, this is like the Oscars for Latino podcasters all over the country, all over Latin America, all over the world. And we were blessed to win the 2022 award for Best Video Podcast. So, that's Charlie, amazing. I know it's hard to, I know you're a big podcast guy like all of us, and you know, having a resource and understanding that there's actually culturally competent podcast content out there, I know is like a real great value.
Absolutely. Like I tune into your podcast. It's funny. I found your podcast before I met you. So just so you know, cool. So it was cool when I finally met you. Yeah, your podcast, I listen to Man Enough is another one that I like. I think that it's trying to break down the stereotype of having to feel or feeling less because you emote your emotions correctly.
Yeah, culturally competent content and particularly in language. The Latin Podcast Awards really gives you a breakdown of the best. If you want to find out what's going on in Uruguay or Spanish language content about mental health, just any category of interest you have related to the Latino community, you got to check out LatinPodcastAwards.com, LatinPodcastAwards.com. They just released on YouTube and online their 2023 award show, which was a very professionally done show. So I encourage everyone to check out Latin Podcast on social media and LatinPodcastAwards.com so you can watch the 2023 show. And also, if you're a Latino podcaster out there, and I encourage you, Charles, to get more involved in the podcast game. You have such a powerful message. You can also submit your podcast to be considered for the 2024 awards. Nice. So follow Latin Podcast Awards on social media. Follow LatinPodcastAwards.com. And maybe one day, if you work hard enough, you can get one of these bad boys. So.
Got to work pretty.
Do we have the Ricky Martin picture? We got to show it. Come on, fam. We got to show it. All right, Dios mío, look at that. Come on. Ricky and Betty, tell us this story, my friend.
Ricky Martin, Ruben. Actually, Sweet Sensation was on tour with Menudo for a minute. Okay. Cover Girls were on tour. It was Cover Girls, Sweet Sensation, Menudo at the time. This is right before Ricky left the group. That's Ruben right next to him, I believe. Yeah. So, we had so much fun being on tour with Menudo. Now, meanwhile, talk about surreal. I was 14 years old with my best friend from across the street, Sonia, you know, scoping out all the hotels that Menudo was in because I was a big Menudo fan. I love Menudo. I still love Menudo. I can sit here and be like, Súbete a mi moto. I know all the songs. I have belt buckles and I have the jackets, and I loved Miguel from Menudo was my favorite until I fell in love with Johnny. So I know.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Isn't that clip incredible? Betty D, the legendary freestyle diva from Sweet Sensation. Remember back in the days, Hooked on You, Sincerely Yours. If Wishes Came True, the list goes on and on. Talking about her interactions in her days, a fan becoming a colleague of Ricky Martin and the legendary Menudo crew from back in those days, and touring with them and the Cover Girls. And I know that brings up a lot of great memories for folks. I definitely encourage people to catch the episode that we did that Betty was featured on, the first one of many. You're going to see her on Bomba Live. She's one of our main co-hosts. Along with her and a lot of great Puerto Rican and Latino star power. The episode we released earlier this week featured Frankie Negroni, like Castro, K7, Dr. Rosa Clemente, as well as our Bomba Live crew. So definitely check that out. On this Found in Translation segment, I wanted to catch people up on my thoughts on kind of politics this week. And so two things are in the minds of a lot of folks, the 2023 elections. That took place where, Democrats performed better than expected and generally really well. Both chambers of the Virginia legislature are now in Democrats' control. The House got flipped. The Virginia State Senate maintained Democratic control. A Democrat won in Kentucky. The abortion access was codified into the Ohio Constitution. The list goes on and on. A lot of good results around the country. And so, I think that it's so interesting because it brings to light a few dynamics. One is that, and this is before 2023, this has been the case for some time, Americans are, from an issue perspective, are center left people. If you poll people, particularly Latinos, even more so, but just in general, Americans, the majority of us generally feel like the government should have a fairly strong hand in trying to resolve problems. We want our healthcare to be better. We want, the student loan issue to be addressed. We want, greater access to affordable housing. We want better education for our kids. Even though there's a very vocal and fairly large minority of people that are about exclusivity and hate, generally want people's rights to be respected. And the majority of us, slighter majority that I'd like, but a majority nevertheless, want our rights to be respected and don't want people to be discriminated against and want an inclusive society. So, but our politics often doesn't work out that way because of sometimes we don't vote enough. Sometimes we get caught up in too many of us get caught up in culture wars and divisive issues. And, there's legitimate issues in the community that we often see Democrats not addressing enough, and that when I get into the 2023, my thoughts on the local Philadelphia race, well, that's comes into focus. So, and now what has made this clear for Democrats or given us Democrats a path to have more of more victories than you would expect is that the Dobbs decision, which has really put abortion in front and center and women's reproductive rights front and center of all the debates, because the law is the law, and increasingly Republican leadership not just supported the initial Dobbs decision on the federal Supreme Court level, but proceeded to then try to restrict women's rights as much as humanly possible on the state level with these governors, 6 weeks abortion ban in Florida, and all these abortion bans of various short lengths and restrictions and real extreme, in some cases, just incredibly extreme scenarios, where there's just no rights for women under any circumstances in some of these states to have abortion access. And so, when you restrict half the country's rights, and that also not only turns them off, but turns out a lot of men in our country that, don't want to see their wives and spouses and daughters and nieces and the women in their lives and their families have those kind of people getting their family business. So that extreme has led to this, pretty resounding on the state and federal level rebuke by voters that vote in general elections. Now, rewind to Sunday's results of the Biden-Trump polling that took place that was released by the New York Times, and this has been fairly consistent with polling that we've seen across the board the last several months, is that Trump in some arguably is leading in some of these swing states, pretty much the majority of which he has to win to take the White House from Biden, and across the board, Biden's favorabilities because of his age and because of the general cranky nature of our electorate right now because of inflation and people just not feeling like they're getting ahead. And in some cases, in some major metropolitan areas, the crime spikes. Biden's in trouble still, regardless of the fact that from an issue perspective, Democrats are with the American public, pretty solidly. So what that means for our politics is that we have to understand that we don't have to change our values. We're with the country value wise and issue wise, and that comes out consistently in the polling, even more acutely with the Latino community. The Latino community is overwhelmingly with us on all these issues, including abortion access and reproductive rights, by the way. But it does, if you dig into the crosstabs of some of this polling, the Latino community is even more sensitive to the economic challenges that our country faces. Latinos are working more than everybody. We are busting our ass more than everybody, working 2-3 jobs, man. And obviously I don't tell you how much harder our immigrant brothers and sisters work than anybody. And we don't feel like we're getting ahead in terms of being able to get a job, their kids affording college, and being able to, buy a home and kind of build wealth the way they feel like they should deserve because of how hard they're working. And they have every right to feel that way. And so, and then the other piece is that, so we have that additional challenge where we have to do extra messaging to the Latino community and listen to them and not just tell them all these great things Biden has done. And he's done some significant good things to try to address these issues, but that we have to, just give me a second, Bobby. My son's over here, my young boy, Max. Just give me a second, big guy. I'll be with you. We have to listen to them, understand that these concerns are legitimate and not just try to convince them that they're wrong, because they're not. They're not wrong. They're feeling these things. These are real issues that in particular are impacting the Latino community, but they're impacting people all over the country. And then we have to invest in organizing them, over a third of the time. And we're going to, my organization, Leaders US, coming out with some fresher polling very soon, which I'll share in the coming days on the show. But, a lot of times nobody talks to Latinos one way or another. So that opens this information desert that we have around politics and what's really going on, leaves skepticism, leaves confusion, and leaves the door open for misinformation to creep in and influence our folks in their politics. So we can't blame them if they don't have the information. We can't blame them for not listening to them. We can't blame them if we're not speaking to them in a language and a style and with stakeholders they respect and voices that they relate to, not just that are Latino, but really impact they relate to their day-to-day lives, and they respect. We can't blame them for not feeling warm and fuzzy about where we're at in our country right now in 2023. So there needs to be a historic investment. And if people dig into Google, I'm in the middle of those conversations in a very in a very large national way and public way recently. But the reality is, there needs to be a lot of investment in empowering Latino leadership and local community organizations and national organizations to communicate and engage our community in this conversation, because if we don't, we could have a very, very bad result next year, and that'll put our whole country in peril. So we have to continue to talk to our folks, respect where they're at, and understand that it's going to take a lot of work to get them in the place they need to be, not just on the presidential level, the Senate level. Manchin's resignation or deciding not to run really gives the Democratic Party no room for error. We basically have to run the table with about 6-7 competitive Senate races next year, many of which Latinos will decide in places like Nevada and Arizona, and my home state of Pennsylvania, among others. But we're going to have to really engage Latinos in places like Orange County, California, Central Valley, California, the Texas Valley, South Florida, Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, northern Colorado, and these in New Mexico, to win and in some places flip congressional districts so that Democrats can control the House going into 2025. So there's a lot on the line. We're going to continue to beat the drum on that situation on a national level. But the last piece of politics I wanted to share was going back to the 2023 election results as it relates to my home city of Philadelphia. We just had our mayoral elections, our city council races, our judicial races, which was very important from a state perspective. We had a former city councilwoman, Cheryl Parker, win election. She'll be not just the first woman, but the first Black woman to be the mayor of Philadelphia, which I think is very appropriate in 2020, going into 2024 for sure, if you know the history of Philadelphia. Look, all things being equal, Ms. Parker, Mayor-elect Parker, perfectly acceptable mayor. I mean, she's paid her dues to city council, and by all accounts is a very competent woman, and we look forward to seeing what she's able to do in city council and in the mayoralty. But we have a lot of skepticism in our community, particularly in the Latino community, about just feeling, well, what does it matter? Democrats have been in control forever. She's part of the quote unquote establishment, and so our folks have a right to be skeptical. And so one of the positive things, one of the opportunities in particularly Latinos have is that our Latino leadership, shout out to Councilwoman Ketsi Lozada, who won her reelection on Tuesday. And we're really excited about her future and are here to support her and in her endeavors on city council. But on down, the community leadership across the board, other elected officials like State Representative Danila Burgos and on and on and on, have access to this mayor. And so they have an opportunity and really have a moment here to really wield their power, wield their influence to really show our community that we can make positive change if we work together. And so there's an opportunity there. I'll certainly be there to support them as our local leadership and also to hold them accountable because we've got a shot here and really excited about the future. But we have to show collectively, and I put myself in that as much as anybody, we have to show collectively that another Democrat or another person that's quote unquote part of the same old is not the same old. And so we have a responsibility to hold ourselves accountable and inform the community about what we're doing to try to make this a new day in Philadelphia. And the last part in Philadelphia that I think is very instructive, which I want to close with, is the Working Families Party, which many of you outside the East Coast may not know too much about. Actually won 2 seats on city council. We reserve the way the city's set up. We have district councils, city district council seats, and we have at-large seats, and there's 7 of them out of the 17 that represent the whole city, and we always reserve 2 for the minority party. That's always the Republicans because they're the minority party in Philly. But the Working Families Party hustled the last cycle in 19 to win one of the seats and now won both the seats. So Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke. And so I wanted to bring that up because and rightfully so. People expressed, even in this last election, a lot of frustration with Philadelphia, with the same old, and our politics writ large across the board, nationwide and on every level. And so I wanted to bring that up because in this case, the Working Families Party and these local leaders did something about it and organized. And you talk about trying to win as a third party, a city council seat in a big city, citywide. It takes a lot of heavy lifting to do that. And so I just want to congratulate them and really teach all of us that if you want to see change, you have to take some responsibility to be part of that change. And so, I just want to, because even people that I don't necessarily agree with on everything or a lot of things, they have a right to have their voice expressed, and it's right for them to want to see better for Philadelphia. And so I would just point to what the Working Families Party just did in Philadelphia and say, if you want to see change, maybe it's a more moderate change, maybe a more conservative change, maybe it's just some change in one department or one issue. You have to take responsibility to be part of making that change happen. It's not just going to happen. And so I encourage people to get more involved in the game, similarly the way the WFP just did, and showing us that change can happen, and change happens all the time. I don't have to tell people, how people's activism is influencing all kind of conversations in this country right now. So kudos to people that are in the game and working to make positive change happen for their community every day. And I want to thank everyone for watching this very special birthday edition of Bomba Live. Thank you all for people that have already reached out. It's early in the morning and dozens of people have already reached out to share their well wishes. I want to thank everyone for being part of this journey. I'm going to go get the kids some pancakes right now. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. Con bomba.